At 3:12 local time in the northern Arabian Sea, the night watch inside the Combat Information Center of a U.S. Navy supercarrier is calm. Radar screens cast a green glow through the darkness as operators follow merchant vessels, escort ships, and far-off contacts across a vast, quiet stretch of ocean. Then the sonar station gives a single chirp. A petty officer leans toward the display. Another tone follows, sharper than the first. The sonar operator goes still for half a second, then speaks. Possible transient. Heads turn immediately. The supervisor steps in behind the console. Across the screen, the waveform rolls by, showing short, violent spikes buried in the ocean's background noise. Then, another spike appears. And another. The operator's voice cuts through the room. 2 transient signatures. For a brief moment, no one says a word because everyone there understands what it could mean. Something has just entered the water. A second later, the system starts calculating speed and bearing. Numbers flash onto the tactical display. More than 50 knots. Course converging. One officer says it under his breath. Incoming torpedoes. The captain does not wait for further confirmation. Sound general quarters. The carrier snaps to life. Alarms ring through the passageways. General quarters. General quarters. All hands man your battle stations. Across the ship's 330-meter flight deck, sailors rush for ladders and hatches. Deep inside the hull, watertight doors slam shut. Weapons crews move to their stations as the giant vessel shifts from routine patrol to full combat readiness in seconds. Back in CIC, the tactical picture becomes clearer. 2 torpedo tracks race across the screen. Distance, 6 nautical miles. Closing fast. Time to intercept, less than 7 minutes. One officer leans toward the captain. Bearing 093. Another voice cuts in. Second track, bearing 147. The room falls quiet again. Different bearings, different launch points. That can mean only one thing: 2 submarines. Someone has just set a crossfire trap for the most valuable ship in the strike group. On the tactical display, the escort destroyers begin to move. 2 Arleigh Burke-class ships break away from formation, pushing to flank speed as they sweep wide arcs around the carrier. Their sonar shifts to active mode. Seconds later, the sea is filled with the deep metallic pulse of sonar pings rolling through the dark water. Above the carrier, a Seahawk helicopter crew, already strapped in, receives the launch order. The rotors begin spinning. In under a minute, the MH-60R lifts from the deck and vanishes into the night, heading straight for the suspected submarine positions. Inside CIC, the torpedo tracks keep updating. 5 miles, 4.2. The carrier itself begins a slow turn, its massive rudders digging into the sea as the helm tries to angle the ship away from the incoming threat. But a nuclear supercarrier weighing more than 100,000 tons cannot move fast, especially not against a torpedo cutting through the water at tremendous speed. Deploy Nixie decoys, the captain orders. Far behind the carrier, cables unspool into the sea. The A/SLQ-25 Nixie countermeasure system drops into the water, sending out powerful acoustic signals meant to draw the torpedoes away from the ship. A moment later, the first track wavers. Its guidance appears to be searching, but the second torpedo stays locked on course. Steady, committed, 3 nautical miles. An officer studies the sonar display. Recommend evasive maneuver. The captain watches the screen for half a second. Maintain the turn. Keep the decoys active. No panic, no shouting, just disciplined, controlled action, because this is exactly the kind of moment the crew has trained for. Even so, the numbers keep falling. 2.5 nautical miles. 2. Then, in the helicopter above, the Seahawk's dipping sonar finally picks up something. A sharp metallic echo cuts through the headphones. Then comes a distinct pattern, the steady rhythm of diesel-electric propellers. The sensor operator calls it out immediately. Subsurface contact confirmed. The data streams back to the carrier in real time. Acoustic matching begins, comparing the sound profile against known signatures. Within seconds, a result appears on the main display. Kilo-class submarine. Iranian Navy. And it's not alone. A second sonar buoy activates 20 miles away. Another contact. Another submarine. Now the full picture comes into focus. 2 Iranian attack submarines, positioned on opposite sides of the strike group, had been waiting in silence beneath the thermocline, hidden in a layer of water that bends sound and conceals movement. Now their torpedoes are already closing in. Inside CIC, the countdown continues. 2 nautical miles, 1.8. The sonar operator stares at the screen, then speaks again, this time with urgency that draws every eye in the room. They've switched to terminal guidance. That changes everything. The torpedoes are no longer searching. They've locked onto their target, and now they're running straight in. 15 minutes earlier, 400 feet below the surface of the Arabian Sea, the world is completely dark. Inside an Iranian Kilo-class attack submarine, the air carries a faint mix of diesel fuel and machine oil. Red lighting fills the narrow control room, where a dozen sailors sit quietly at their stations. The submarine is running on battery power. No engine noise, no sudden movement, just the slow, steady turn of the propeller pushing thousands of tons of steel through black water at 3 knots. The sonar operator raises his hand. Surface contacts detected. On the display, multiple acoustic signatures appear. Large, slow, layered. Exactly what they've been waiting for. The officer of the watch leans closer. Carrier group. Even through the natural noise of the ocean, the signature is unmistakable. A nuclear-powered supercarrier produces a unique acoustic footprint. Cooling systems, turbines, auxiliary machinery, all blending into a deep mechanical pulse. Around it, escorts move in formation, destroyers and cruisers forming a protective perimeter. The Iranian commander studies the display. Distance, 18 nautical miles. Perfect. He glances at the navigation plot. His submarine sits directly ahead of the carrier's projected path, hidden beneath a temperature layer that distorts sonar and masks his position. But the real advantage lies elsewhere. 20 miles to the west, a second submarine waits silently. Another Kilo-class vessel, another crew holding steady beneath the surface. For nearly 6 hours, both submarines have drifted into position. No transmissions, no radar, no periscope exposure. Only passive listening and patience, because the entire plan depends on timing. The commander raises a finger. Confirm target classification. The sonar operator nods. Multiple escorts. One large acoustic signature consistent with a U.S. supercarrier. The commander remains silent for a few seconds, then he gives a quiet command. Prepare tube 1. In the torpedo compartment, the crew moves quickly. Hydraulic clamps release as a massive 533mm heavyweight torpedo slides into place inside the launch tube. Nearly 2 tons of guided machinery designed to track and pursue the loudest target in the water. The technician seals the tube. Tube 1 ready. Back in the control room, the submarine makes a slight course adjustment, aligning for the shot. The carrier group continues to close the distance. 14 nautical miles. 13. Inside the submarine, the only sounds are the soft hum of electronics and the faint creak of pressure against the hull. The commander raises the periscope briefly, just a quick check. Above, the surface shows nothing but darkness, with faint moonlight stretching across the waves. The radar warning receiver remains silent. No detection. The periscope lowers. The commander turns to the fire control officer. Target solution. The system calculates speed, bearing, and lead angle. Seconds pass. Then the result appears. Solution stable. At nearly the same moment, far to the west, the second submarine completes the same process. 2 crews, 2 torpedoes, 2 attack paths. If both weapons arrive at nearly the same time, the carrier's defenses will be forced to split their response. That is the core of the plan. Overwhelm the reaction window. The Iranian commander places his hand on the launch console. Fire 1. Compressed air bursts through the launch tube. A powerful surge of pressure drives the torpedo forward. It shoots out of the submarine and into open water, its propeller engaging seconds later as the guidance system locks onto the carrier's acoustic signature. On the sonar display, the weapon vanishes into the dark, weapon running. 30 seconds later, hundreds of meters away, the second submarine fires. Another torpedo slips into the sea. Now 2 weapons are moving beneath the surface, accelerating silently toward their target. Inside both submarines, the crews listen as the faint hum of the torpedoes fades into the distance. The commander gives a small, controlled nod. If everything goes according to plan, the weapons will reach the carrier in just a few minutes. And by the time the Americans fully react, the window to stop them will be almost gone. But there's something they don't know. Hours earlier, high above the same stretch of ocean, a different operation had already reshaped the situation. A Boeing P-8 Poseidon had flown a slow, deliberate grid pattern across the area. From its underside, it released more than 100 sonobuoys, forming a wide acoustic network beneath the waves. Each buoy listening, each buoy recording, and one of them had already picked up something important. The faint, quiet signature of a diesel-electric submarine moving silently through the darkness. Back within the carrier strike group, that data had been under analysis all night. Processed, tracked, refined. So when the torpedoes finally entered the water, the U.S. Navy already had a clear idea of where the threat was coming from. 3:15 local time. Just 3 minutes after launch, the entire strike group shifts from pure defense to active pursuit. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical display now shows 2 battles unfolding at once. One on the surface, one below it. The torpedoes are still closing in, but attention is already shifting. Because the moment a submarine fires, it gives away something critical: its position. Mark launch bearing, the tactical officer orders. Two thin lines extend backward from the torpedo tracks on the display, stretching across the ocean. Each line points to where the weapons must have originated. Two sectors, two submarines, two targets. The captain responds immediately. Begin anti-submarine engagement. Out on the dark water, the escort ships react without hesitation. The first Arleigh Burke-class destroyer turns sharply to port, its bow cutting through the sea as it accelerates toward the eastern launch bearing. Another destroyer swings south, widening the net. Both ships activate their hull-mounted sonar. Moments later, the ocean fills with sound. A powerful active sonar pulse surges outward, a deep metallic wave expanding through miles of water. Seconds pass. Then the echo returns. On board one destroyer, the sonar operator leans closer to the display. There it is. A contact appears. Distance, 12 nautical miles. Depth, approximately 400 feet. Speed, minimal. Exactly where predicted. Submarine contact classified, the operator reports. Back on the carrier, the data feeds directly into CIC. A track number is assigned. Status updated. Hostile confirmed. Above the ocean, and Sikorsky MH-60R Seahawk races toward the same coordinates. Inside the aircraft, the sensor operator releases the first sonobuoy into the sea. It hits the surface and immediately begins transmitting acoustic data. A second buoy follows, then a third. Within moments, a compact detection grid forms over the suspected position. The operator activates the dipping sonar. A long cable unspools beneath the helicopter, lowering a sonar dome deep into the water. Then the pulses begin, ping, ping, ping. Then the operator hears it. A low mechanical rhythm buried beneath the ocean's background noise. The steady rotation of propeller blades, slow, heavy, unmistakably diesel-electric. He calls it out immediately. Submarine contact confirmed. Back on the carrier, the CIC updates again. Iranian Kilo-class submarine, range closing. At the same time, the fight against the incoming torpedoes is still unfolding. On the tactical display, the two tracks begin to behave very differently. The first torpedo starts drifting off course. The Nixie acoustic decoy trailing behind the carrier is working exactly as intended, broadcasting a stronger, more attractive sound signature than the ship itself. The torpedo reacts, its guidance shifts, and the weapon begins to turn. Now it's chasing the decoy, but the second torpedo does something else entirely. It ignores it. Second weapon still tracking the carrier, the sonar operator reports. Distance, 2 nautical miles. Speed unchanged. The captain glances toward the helm. Maintain the turn. The carrier's massive rudders continue forcing the ship into a slow arc through the water. Every degree matters, but the torpedo keeps closing. Above the surface, the Seahawk receives a new order. Engage submarine. Inside the Sikorsky MH-60R Seahawk, the pilots exchange a quick look before banking sharply toward the sonar contact. Below them, the submarine moves slowly beneath the thermocline, its crew unaware they've already been located. The sensor operator marks the position. Contact holding depth. Bearing steady. The aircraft stabilizes overhead. The weapons officer reaches for the control panel. Mounted beneath the fuselage are 2 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes, built specifically to track and neutralize submarines. Fast, precise, and highly effective. But before the helicopter can release, another transmission cuts in from the carrier. Torpedo closing fast. Back in CIC, the tactical display flashes red. The second torpedo is now less than a mile away, and still locked on. The sonar operator studies the screen, then speaks, his voice quieter now. Weapon switching modes. The captain looks up. What mode? A brief pause. Terminal homing. That means the torpedo has stopped searching. It has identified its target, and now it's running straight toward it at full speed. 3:17 local time. Inside CIC, every screen is focused on a single red track. Distance, 1,000 yards. Closing. The updates come rapidly. Range decreasing, 800 yards. No one speaks. The carrier is already turning, but a ship of this size, over 100,000 tons, cannot maneuver quickly. Every second matters. On the bridge, the officer of the deck grips the rail as the helmsman holds the course. Maintain rudder, the captain says calmly. Below the waterline, the massive rudders angle deeper, forcing the bow slowly away from the torpedo's path. But the weapon keeps adjusting. Inside its guidance system, the torpedo listens, tracking the loudest mechanical signature in the ocean. And nothing stands out more than a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Back in CIC. 600 yards, the tactical officer leans forward. Decoy active, Nixie broadcasting. Far behind the ship, the AN/SLQ-25 Nixie trails through the water on a steel cable. The small device emits powerful acoustic signals designed to mimic and outmatch the carrier's own noise. To the torpedo, it should sound like the perfect target, but the weapon hasn't committed yet. 500 yards. The room is silent except for steady, controlled reports. Outside, the ocean remains dark and calm, no visible sign of the deadly race happening beneath the surface. On the display, the Torpedoes' track begins to shift slightly. The sonar operator narrows his eyes. Weapon oscillating. The captain immediately understands. The Torpedoes seeker is deciding, carrier or decoy. Behind the ship, the Nixie continues broadcasting stronger and stronger signals, pulling at the weapon's guidance system. 400 yards. For a brief moment, the Torpedo hesitates. Then, the red track begins to drift. Just a few degrees at first, but enough. Weapon turning, the operator says. The Torpedo adjusts its course, slowly, then more decisively, and finally, it commits. The weapon breaks away from the carrier and begins tracking the Nixie decoy trailing far behind. Inside CIC, a few officers exchange quick glances, but no one relaxes. Not yet. Torpedoes can still correct their path. 300 yards. The weapon accelerates slightly as it commits to its new target. The distance from the carrier begins to increase, but the decoy remains dangerously close behind. At the Nixie control station, sailors monitor the cable tension carefully. The small device trailing in the water is now the Torpedo's only focus. Then it happens. A violent underwater detonation erupts several hundred yards behind the carrier. The shockwave rolls through the sea, striking the massive hull. The entire ship shudders. Inside CIC, lights flicker for just a fraction of a second before stabilizing. Explosion detected. Range aft 600 yards. The captain turns toward the sonar station. Confirmed decoy impact. The technician studies the return. On the display, a cloud of bubbles expands where the detonation occurred. The Nixie signal disappears. He nods. Torpedo neutralized. Decoy destroyed. A quiet breath moves through the room. No cheers, just controlled relief. The carrier is safe. For now. Because somewhere below the surface, the submarine that launched the attack is still out there. Above the ocean, the Sikorsky MH-60R Seahawk continues circling over the contact detected minutes earlier. Inside the aircraft, the sensor operator watches the acoustic feed from the dipping sonar. The submarine hasn't changed much. Still deep, still slow. The pilot glances toward the weapons panel. Target holding? Affirmative. Back in CIC, the order is transmitted. Helicopter, you are cleared to engage. Inside the Seahawk, the weapons officer flips open a safety cover. His hand moves to the release switch. Below them, nearly 400 feet beneath the surface, the Iranian submarine continues its slow movement through the darkness. The crew still believes their attack is in progress. They cannot see the carrier. They cannot see the destroyers closing in from two directions. And they cannot hear the helicopter hovering directly above. But the Seahawk crew hears everything. The sensor operator refines the position, then speaks into the intercom. Target acquired. 3:19 local time. High above the Arabian Sea, the Seahawk holds a steady orbit. Its rotors cut through the night air while the ocean below appears calm and empty. But the crew knows exactly what lies beneath. 400 feet down, a Kilo-class submarine moves slowly, still unaware it has been located. Inside the helicopter, the sonar display paints a clear picture. A long cylindrical hull, large propeller blades turning at a steady pace. Depth, approximately 400 feet. Speed, minimal. Submarine contact stable, the operator confirms. The pilot keeps the aircraft steady as the weapons officer arms the payload. Mounted beneath the Seahawk is a Mark 54 lightweight torpedo, designed for precision, built specifically to track submarines. The officer inputs the final data. Bearing, depth, estimated speed. The system processes the solution within seconds. Solution ready. Back inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, every station is now focused on the live feed from the helicopter. The captain watches for a brief moment, then gives the final authorization. Engage. Inside the Seahawk, the weapons officer hits the release. The torpedo drops cleanly from the helicopter and splashes into the sea below. For a brief instant, it rides the surface. Then, the engine comes alive. The Mark 54 angles sharply downward, slipping beneath the waves as its guidance system begins searching for the submarine's acoustic trail. Underwater, the weapon builds speed fast. Inside the Iranian submarine, the sonar operator suddenly goes rigid. A new sound has appeared, high-pitched, fast, and closing rapidly. His voice cuts across the control room. Torpedo in the water. The commander turns immediately. Bearing? The operator checks the display. Above us. That answer tells them everything. The Americans have already found them. Emergency dive, the commander orders. Ballast tanks flood as the submarine angles downward, trying to reach deeper water beneath the thermal layer where sonar becomes less effective. But the Mark 54 is already locked onto the submarine's propeller noise, adjusting course as it closes the distance. Inside the submarine, the crew launches acoustic countermeasures, small decoys meant to confuse an incoming weapon. One enters the water, then another. Artificial propeller sounds spread in multiple directions. For a moment, the torpedo hesitates. Its seeker compares the signals. Then it makes its choice. The real submarine is still the stronger contact. The weapon commits. Closing distance, 200 meters. Inside the control room, the sonar operator lowers his voice. Impact imminent. The commander grips the console, and then the ocean convulses. A massive underwater shock rolls through the darkness. The submarine is hit by a crushing wave of force. Inside the Seahawk cockpit, the sensor operator sees the result instantly on the sonar display. A violent bloom of bubbles expands outward, followed by sudden silence. Contact lost, he reports. Back on the carrier, CIC receives the acoustic update. The tactical officer gives a short nod. First submarine out of the fight, but the encounter is not over. 20 miles away, the second Iranian submarine has already heard the blast. Inside its control room, the sonar operator reports the distant shockwave. The commander understands immediately. The ambush has failed. Now they are the ones being tracked. He orders maximum silent running. Power drops to the lowest possible level as the submarine tries to slip away beneath the ocean's thermal layers. But the American destroyer moving into that sector has been listening the entire time. On the destroyer's deck, a launcher swings into position. Inside the tube sits an anti-submarine rocket. The targeting solution arrives through the strike group's tactical network. Coordinates locked, depth estimated. Fire. The rocket blasts into the sky, streaking across the darkness for several miles before diving back toward the sea. Moments later, it hits the water. The casing separates, releasing a second torpedo beneath the surface. The weapon activates immediately. The Iranian submarine begins maneuvering hard, trying to break contact, but the torpedo has already picked up the acoustic trail of the propeller. 2 minutes later, the destroyer's sonar operator hears it, a deep underwater impact. Then a second, smaller sound as internal compartments begin to fail under pressure. Back inside the carrier's CIC, the tactical display clears. Both submarine tracks vanish from the screen. Only the carrier strike group remains. The captain studies the display for a moment, then speaks quietly. Log the engagement. The tactical officer enters the final report. 2 hostile submarines, both removed from the battle. Above the water, the Seahawk circles once, then turns back toward the carrier. Along the horizon, the first light of dawn begins to spread across the sea. The ocean grows quiet again. No public statement, no dramatic announcement. Just another entry in the strike group's combat log. 2 torpedoes launched. 2 submarines no longer in contact. Carrier secure.